So in this lesson, I'm going to start showing you how to use some of the more typical common HTML elements. Now, when I say elements, there is a slight difference between elements and tags. See, all of these are tags, but whenever we have an opening and closing, this constitutes an element. So slight difference, and whenever I'm referring to elements, that's going to mean that any of this content here within the web page. So if I create a typical one for creating content would be a paragraph tag. So opening and closing paragraph, and we just save that. And now we can go out to our website. So let's take a look at that and refresh it. And we see, there we go. We've got Hello World popping up there. Now, if you're looking at this and saying, okay, well, we've already done this. We already did that Hello World over here. And that's correct because we actually did it within that same way. So I'm just going to save this, and I'm going to work a little bit with CodePen. And the reason that I'm going to work with CodePen is that we're going to be able to see the effects right away immediately on the right-hand side whenever I update the HTML code. And this is going to be beneficial because this is going to show us some of the really neat things about HTML code that we might not necessarily be able to see whenever we're going back and forth between the editor and the browser. So one of the things with HTML code is that even if I'm applying a bunch of spacing here, HTML code will always limit it to one space. So even if I do something like this, and if I save it, we see that I do have a whole bunch of spacing here, but it only applies it as one space. So if I want to indent this paragraph, let's see what happens now. Nothing happens because it's actually not reading any of this content. So it's reading whatever is between the element tags that's nested within the element tags, and if we are using white space, it limits it to only one character of white space. And if we do want to apply more spacing, then we do need to apply that within CSS. And this is something that's important to note because when you are building out your HTML page, you're actually not worrying about the way that it's going to look. You're only structuring how it's going to be presented. So I'm structuring the content and what elements I need in order to style the CSS. That's what I'm thinking about when I'm building out the web page. So I would never have to worry about something like, oh, if I wanted a bunch of space before the hello, that I would include that in the HTML. I'm going to worry about that at a later point when it comes to the CSS. So let's tidy this up, clean this up a little bit, and go back to what we were doing here before. So this is a typical paragraph tag. Now there's another one as well that's similarly used when we're presenting content within our web page, and that's going to be a line break. And this is a self-closing tag. So we see that whenever we include BR, then it actually moves to a new line. And there is a difference between the paragraphs and line breaks. We see that with the paragraph tags that it actually adds in some spacing between these tags. So it's got some default styling that comes with the paragraph as opposed to just regular text where we've got these line breaks, and we're going to see that it's not actually doing any spacing. There's no additional styling that's added to it, and it's simply presented as what we're typing into our HTML code, and there's no additional presentation of that element. So these are line breaks, these are paragraphs, so typically used in order to present our content. We also have a few other ones that you might see quite often that are being used. So one of them is the bold tag. So we've got bold, and similar to bold, we've got strong. And immediately they're going to actually look very similar. So when you look at it, they're both bolded, but the difference between bold and strong is that strong emphasizes the text, whereas bold is just defines bold text, so there's no extra importance to that. So if you want to really emphasize it, you're gonna use bold. If you want to emphasize it, you're going to use strong, and if you just want bold, you're going to use bold. So there's slight difference, and most of the time you're going to see just the B bolds. You might not see the strong used as much. There's also the italic, And so this is just an italic. So basically what it does is it slants the text slightly. So we see here in the presentation here on the right hand side that our text is slightly slanted there under the italic. And we also have another version of that as well. So this is the EM. So this is emphasize element. And you see again, they look very similar, but with emphasize, we do have that extra semantic importance that gets added into the tag. So other ones that you might see being used are small, and basically what this is, it makes the text a little bit smaller. So if I had some regular text here, and if I had small, we see that the small, in fact, is going to be just smaller, slightly smaller. I'm going to maybe wrap this in a paragraph here. And this is the other thing with HTML, is that we can have these tags that are nested in other elements. So we can reuse elements over and over again. So we've got our paragraph as our main element here, and we've got some content that's nested within there. So we've got the paragraph element wrapping around there. And we see that just as up here, we've got hello world presented, and we get that styling around that main paragraph. We've got the same thing going on here, where we've got that same styling that's being applied, but now it's being applied to everything that's within here. So it's being applied red because we still have our styling color set to red on paragraphs. So that was something that we had done in one of the previous lessons, but we see that it's being presented within this way. Now, some of the less common ones, you might see that sometimes people will use a subscript. So if we had sub here and subscripted, so closing sub, oh, I forgot to close that one there. So we've got our subscripted text, so you see that it bumps it down a little bit, and alternative to that, we've got sup, so that's subscripted, superscripted. So this is the one that it goes up, so subscripted. And again, opening and closing content within it receives that basic styling that's predetermined within that element. Now, a lot of this stuff you're going to be using on a regular basis. So obviously paragraphs, line breaks, and the bolding are used most often, and then also the italics and some of the other ones, small, you might see used as well quite often. And you don't really see a lot of sub and sup, but it's there if you do need to use it.